Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva. Text 15. Yad uktam pati drishtena girishena prasidata Tadhyayanto japantascha pujayantascha samyata. Yat, that. Uktam, said. Pati, on the way. Drishtena, well meeting. Girishena, by Lord Shiva. Prasidata, being very much satisfied. Tat, that. Jayantaha, meditating. Japanta cha, chanting also. Pujayanta cha, worshipping also. Samyata, with great control. Translation: when all the sons of Prachinabarhi left home to execute austerities, they met Lord Shiva, who out of great mercy instructed them about the absolute truth. All the sons of Prachinabarhi meditated upon the instructions, chanting and worshipping them with great care and attention. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is clear that to perform austerities or penances, or for that matter, any form of devotional service, one has to be guided by a spiritual master. Here it is clearly stated that the 10 sons of Maharaj Prachinabarhi were favored by the appearance of Lord Shiva, who out of great kindness gave them instructions regarding the execution of austerities. Lord Shiva actually became the spiritual master of the 10 sons, and in turn his disciples took his words so seriously that simply by meditating upon his instructions, Jayantaha, they became perfect. This is the secret of success. After being initiated and receiving the orders of the spiritual master, the disciple should unhesitatingly think about the instructions or orders of the spiritual master and should not allow himself to be disturbed by anything else. This is also the verdict of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who, while explaining a verse of Bhagavad-gita, Vyavasaya Mikabhutir Ekiha Kurunandana, points out that the order of the spiritual master is the life substance of the disciple. The disciple should not consider whether he is going back home, back to Godhead. His first business should be to execute the order of his spiritual master. Thus, a disciple should always meditate on the order of the spiritual master, and that is perfectional meditation. Not only should he meditate upon that order, but he should find out the means by which he can perfectly worship and execute it. I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all the Vaishnavas who are present here today and online. The Vaishnavas are the most worshipable of all living entities in the universe. Hare Krishna. This instruction is practical because by making oneself open, by being humble, as Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad-gita, amanidvam adambitvam. Two first tenets of knowledge are humility and pridelessness. And being therefore open to take instruction from superior authority puts one always in an advantageous situation. And when one finds the Supreme Personality of Godhead's instructions, both directly from the Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and from the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master, and connects to those instructions as one's life and soul, takes them as the prime directive of his or her life, then one can become perfect. And one also gets solace amidst all the changes of material life. So this is the assured method of making rapid progress in devotional service. And that is to study and find the clear instruction of the Supreme Lord. And also to find a spiritual master, that is, one who has also received instructions in disciplic succession and therefore has a mission in life, and attach oneself to that personality, that Vaishnava, and get an instruction through which one can be guided throughout one's life. These instructions are practical. They have to do with certain prohibitions. For instance, there are 4 regulative principles, and one might overlook these as being too simple to be effective. However, by following the 4 regulative principles, one stays above the fray of the material energy and doesn't become entangled. And also by taking the positive injunctions in general to always remember Krishna, especially by keeping the transcendental vibration going, these two together, that is, avoiding the anomalies of material life by staying away from activities that are inherently sinful and which are natural inclinations for all conditioned souls, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just by these 2 general instructions, one can sustain oneself anywhere and everywhere and not succumb to the influence of material nature. And then, if one can get some instruction personally from a spiritual master, which requires that one is submissive. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, you should approach a spiritual master with 3 attitudes. Tadvidi pranipatena priprashnena sevaya. That means you should go there in an open way, desiring to have direction. Pranipat means I'm open to your direction. I'm not full, I'm empty, and I'm looking for your help. And Pranipat Priprashnena Sevaya means that one should ask relevant questions in order to adjust one's life correctly. If one asks the proper questions, as we see Vidura asks to Maitreya in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Vidura was a pure devotee. Prabhupada points out that even a pure devotee needs such instruction and seeks it out. So he sought out Uddhava. Uddhava referred Vidura to Maitreya. And Vidura asked relevant questions, and he started with very basic points in order to be directed. Prabhupada says that pure devotional service is so subtle that even somebody of the stature of Vidura needs to take such instruction. And that kind of sincerity comes out in the quality of one's questions. Going away from any hearing and chanting session, or by sincerely practicing any discipline, one will come out with more questions than answers. Because if you're sincerely trying, then you'll find where your gaps are. And then you'll be hungry to ask an expert or somebody who's already filled the gaps, how do I fill the gaps for myself? If one doesn't have questions, relevant questions, there's a way in which one may not be practicing intensely enough. But pariprashnena, by asking questions to the proper person, one can then find one's way forward in a very proficient way. And finally, sevaya means one should render service. One should render personal service to the person who's in knowledge and who can help one. Because when one does so, it's natural that such a person's heart opens, and the contents of the heart goes out to the sincere servitor and inquirer. And that's how Krishna recommends that one advance in the science of Krishna consciousness. One should take advantage of these three tenets. And also, by following, one becomes eligible for what one may not ordinarily be eligible for. For instance, in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Suta Goswami says, Bejare munio tagre bhagavan tamatoksajam sattvam vishudham shemaya kalpante yenutaniha. Before I say the translation, can I have a Bhagavad-gita, please? This isn't from the Gita, but the next verse in my head is. And this verse says that previously there were great personalities, and they knew how to worship the Supreme Personality of God. At 331, could you turn? They knew the benefit of worshiping Lord Vishnu because he's beyond the three modes of material nature. And they devised a means in which to worship him properly. And then Suta Goswami goes on to say, anyone who follows these sages, follows the path that they've set up, will become eligible for the same result that they attained. In other words, one may not be a great sage, one may not be a great personality, one may be full of faults. However, if one follows carefully the instruction that is passed down from these great souls to the best of one's ability, then one is eligible for the same result that these great acharyas and personalities attained in days of yore. And if you'd like me to prove that point, I'll read this purport. And if you'd like to go unproven, then we can just skip it. Which would you prefer?
Prove it.
Prove it? Okay, I'll prove it. This is 331 in the Bhagavad-gita, in which Krishna says, Ye me matam idam nityam anuchishtanti manava shadavanto nasuyanto muchante tepi karmabi. The translation is, those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions. Somebody who has a dictionary, look up injunction, please. And who follows this teaching faithfully. There's a hint. If you have a smartphone, you have a dictionary. Without envy, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Purport. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is eternally true without exception. What is it, Nirkula? Injunction?
I have it.
Oh, you have it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Give him the microphone. Quick.
Injunction. Late Middle English from late Latin, injunctio, which means to enjoin, to impose, meaning a command, a noun of action, the past participle, stem of Latin, to impose, inflict, to bring upon, literally to attach.
To attach. Literally to attach. Okay. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom and therefore is eternally true without exception. How does that first sentence strike you? Doesn't strike you? I'll read it again. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom and therefore is eternally true without exception. How did it strike you now? What?
The words are command of Krishna.
The words are a command of Krishna? Was that a question or an answer?
Are the essence of Krishna.
Okay. How did it strike you, though, emotionally? Yes?
Well, the statement is saying that ultimately all of it is culminated in the fact that you follow Krishna's injunctions.
Okay, but I'm asking how it strikes you. How do you feel about this sentence? Huh?
Deep, it's profound.
In what way?
It's reminding us that everything comes from Krishna, that he's the origin of everything.
Okay.
And there has to be a start for everything at some point. And it's right here.
Thank you. Do you see anything else? Does it strike you in any other way, this statement? It's profound, it's deep. What does it mean to you?
So like as Mataji mentioned, it's profound. It's profound that it's true without an exception.
Yeah?
Because it is the wisdom of the Vedas.
You're defining it again and again, but what does it mean to you? How does it affect your life in any way?
Whatever Krishna or his bona fide representative says is, I have to accept it without an exception.
Okay.
Try to.
How does that make you feel?
Charged up, maybe inspired.
Inspired? Okay, that's what I'm asking for, how it strikes you. How does it make you feel? Jessica's shaking her head. How does it make you feel?
It makes me feel hopeful.
Good. Hopeful.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping for.
Krishna is with me.
Hold that close to your mouth.
Krishna is with me.
Closer.
You know,
Thank you.
um,
Keep it up there.
yeah, like,
It makes you feel hopeful.
yeah, and that it changed my life, and maybe I can inspire someone else.
Okay. This is the point about these orders and injunctions is they're for us. And they're available. This is real. And this is what Prabhupada's pointing out in the first sentence. He says the injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom and is therefore eternally true without exception. That's a live wire you can grab onto. You've got something available right there. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad-gita but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruit of action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. My point was that the injunctions, the instructions, and the example of the previous acharyas and of Krishna are fully available to us. And if one takes them with full faith and does the best that one can in the condition that one's in now to follow those injunctions, then one will become liberated without question. Even if one's not able to perfectly execute those injunctions at this point, they will lift us up by the attempt, by trying to follow the injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also mentioned by the demigods when they're praying to Lord Krishna within the womb. Tvayam bujaksha kila sattvadamni samadhina veshita chetasaike tvatpada potena mahatkritena kurvanti govatsa padam vavabdim. They say that the ultimate object of life is obtained by focusing one's attention on Krishna. And then he says that the previous acharyas give the example of how to follow and how to focus one's attention on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if one approaches those instructions with the intention of following them, then they become like a boat and they can take one across the material ocean. They also are so powerful that if one approaches the injunctions with the intention of following them, does the best that one can to follow them, then the ocean of material existence shrinks down and it becomes the size of the hoofprint of a calf. So that big ocean that was so formidable then becomes easily to step over. Because you could step over a little puddle contained within the hoofprint of a calf, right? And that's how powerful the instructions are. So Now we'll take some reflections just on these points. Anything that you heard so far in the purport or from the main points that I made in the monologue? Yes.
I was just recalling the word vouchsafe that you had used in one of your classes recently, and that sentence basically just vouchsafes that success is guaranteed.
Can you use vouchsafe in a sentence according to the point you're making?
If I follow the instructions that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad-gita, then my success in my spiritual life has been vouchsafed.
I would say if we follow the instructions that have been vouchsafed by Krishna. This is a bequeathment, right? He's vouchsafed. He's given us instructions. They're so valuable. Just by following them carefully to the best of one's ability, then one will come to the perfectional stage of life. Thank you. Nice point. What else?
Whenever we're reading Nectar of Devotion, Great Hope, I think it's chapter 18, and it talks about you have to hope against hope, right? And one should not lose faith in Krishna, and he will never leave you. So this just reminded me of that kind of paragraph.
Thank you very much. I need Srimad Bhagavatam 2:934, please. In 2:934, which the verse is Ratertamya Pratyeta, which you know. It's the verse that says, I quoted it the other day, that anything you see in the world that is not connected to the Supreme Personality of God is the illusory energy. And then in the last paragraph of this purport to the verse, Srila Prabhupada tells us that the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as it was given to Brahma, because the verse Ratirtam Yat Pratyeta is an instruction directly spoken by Krishna to Brahma. And in this world, there's only darkness. But when one is able to find the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take it, then one has light. And Prabhupada says that the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the product of his internal potency. And it is by that potency that one comes to see the Lord face to face. Thanks, Gaura. I'll read you the exact paragraph. According to the Padma Purana, within the material compass, there are innumerable material universes, and all of them are full of darkness. Any living being beginning from the Brahmas, there are innumerable Brahmas in innumerable universes, to the insignificant ant, are all born in darkness, and they require factual light from the Lord to see Him directly, just as the sun can be seen only by the direct light of the sun. No lamp or man-made torchlight, however powerful it may be, can help one see the sun. The sun reveals itself. Therefore, the action of different energies of the Lord or the personality of God Himself can be realized by the light manifested by the causeless mercy of the Lord. The impersonalists say that God cannot be seen. God can be seen by the light of God and not by man-made speculations. Here this light is specifically mentioned as vidyat. As what? Which is an order by the Lord to Brahma. This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of His internal energy. And this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. Do you want to hear that again? Say yes.
Yes.
This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal energy, and this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. You want to hear it again?
Yes.
This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal energy, and this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. So I have a question for you. What is the means for seeing the Lord face to face? Radha Mohan Prabhu?
Lord's eternal energy.
It doesn't count unless you use the microphone.
Lord's internal energy.
The Lord's internal energy. Where does that? How do I find the Lord's internal energy? It sounds amorphous to me, the Lord's internal energy. Where is it practically available to me right now? Yes.
Direct order of the Lord.
Give her a hand. Correct. I'll read it again. Are you ready? Say yes. This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal energy. And this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. So, what is the manifestation of the Lord's internal energy? It's a question for you all. What is the manifestations of the Lord's internal energy? First of all, would you like to contact the Lord's internal energy? Are you? You're not happy with the external energy? Okay. What is the means by which to contact the Lord's internal energy? What is the manifestation of the Lord's internal energy? The direct order of the Lord. Yes. So I'll read it again. This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal energy. And this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. So, these direct orders that we get from the Lord and from the Lord's representative. Who's the Lord's representative? One who's following the Lord's instructions, and that includes surrendering to a spiritual master and following through the disciplic succession. Becomes an authorized person who's embraced the tenets of devotional service as given in the instructions of the Lord in the Bhagavad-gita, and then passes it on. If one connects oneself in that authorized way and follows the instructions that one's given, despite the fact that one's life is distracted and miserable. Does that sound familiar? Thank you. One will come to the perfectional stage of life by holding on to that order as if it was a rope that's pulling you out of a blind well. A blind well is a field. There's a big hole in a field. I remember one of these. I found one once. I read about it in the scriptures so many times, and it really scared me because I saw that hiking in this field there was a well that had dried up and had been left there. It was very deep, and there was grass all around it, and I nearly stepped into it. And then I thought about what it says in the scripture, that when you fall into that well, you can call out as loud as you like and no one will hear you. But the way to come out is if someone dangles a rope down and you can hold on to it, and then you can be pulled out of the well. So the way in which one can be pulled out of the dark well of material life is by getting the direct order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and holding on to it as one's life and soul. Then easily one can be pulled out of the dark well of material existence. And now we'll take some questions. Yes?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class, Prabhu. Sometimes Krishna gives contradictory instructions. For example, in Bhagavad-gita 18.5, he says that one should not abandon such activities as yajna, dana, and tapa, which was basically formed the religion. And then in 1866 he says, abandon all religions. That sounds like contradictory. On one hand, we should not abandon them, and then he says we should abandon. So how, and surrender unto him. How to understand this seeming contradictions?
It requires Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, because there are innumerable instructions throughout the Shastra, and to triangulate and find out how to follow the direct instructions of the Lord, one should have Guru, because Guru is like a lawyer. There are a lot of instructions in law books also. And if you just hunt around on the internet, for instance, doctors often recommend, if you're feeling some symptoms, don't go to WebMD and look them up for yourself, because you'll freak yourself out. You'll get on there and then it'll say, oh, this disease doesn't have any symptoms. And you go, oh, I have that. I don't have any symptoms. I must be really sick. Because by speculation and by going through it oneself without the guidance of a doctor who can find out exactly, because he or she has seen similar cases before and can understand what this is. In a similar way, one has to have a guru who's like a lawyer and who knows the law, and then when you ask about specific points that seem contradictory, that person can balance them for you and say this but not that, this applies here, not that. And then you can also see for yourself in the Shastra, if one reads all of the Shastra that is available, for instance, if you read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the whole Bhagavad-gita, you'll have a different vision of the instructions given by Srila Prabhupada than you will if you go on the internet and read excerpts that people cherry pick and put out there for their own agenda. Because those are picked out and put up in isolated circumstances. But if you read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, for instance, if you were to sit down and read the Srimad Bhagavatam over a period of time contiguously, and you hear the whole thing carefully, then you'll be well instructed, or you'll have a balanced idea about the various kinds of things that Prabhupada says, and that the Shastra says as well. So Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra are necessary to triangulate oneself through the darkness of the material world. And that's why Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that all of my followers must read all of my books. Otherwise, they'll eat, sleep, and fall down from the path of devotional service. As my father used to say, it's easy as falling off a log. That was one of his sayings. And falling into Maya is easy as falling off a log. You know about that here in Canada, because that's one of your national pastimes. Not falling off, but trying to stay on. And so you really do have to be an avid studier of the books that we have available and go through them completely. And then you'll see, you'll be able to sort out the various kinds of apparent contradictions that are there. Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Yes, Gaura Prabhu. Oh, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up.
Okay, go ahead.
So can that also be applied to Srila Prabhupada's instructions? Because we can often see letters quoted, and Prabhupada could have given different instructions to different devotees, and we might not just take one letter without context and apply it to other.
Context is vitally important when you're dealing with any topic, and that includes when you're talking about Scripture. Because it's easy to isolate one statement and then just say, oh, that applies to everybody, but you have to see the context. Yes, very important.
In the purport, I find this statement from Srila Prabhupada really interesting. He says, the disciple should not consider whether he is going back home, back to Godhead. His first business should be to execute the order of his spiritual master. So I'm trying to understand Prabhupada's psychology here. The disciple should not consider whether he is going back home, back to Godhead. So is he referring to people who are like more in the bhajananandi mood, who are more concerned about their personal liberation, that if they're in that mentality, they may actually be minimizing the order of the spiritual master? What's your understanding?
Well, in general, the mood of a devotee is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. What's the verse I'm thinking of, Bhagavad? The verse I have in my mind right now. Narayana paraksarve nakutashana bibhyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyarta darshina. A devotee doesn't apitulyarta darshana. He considers heaven and hell to be equal. Why? Because his only concentration is how to serve the Lord. Narayana paraksarve nakutashana bibhyati. He's not afraid of material existence because he's aware of the fact that he's holding on to the direct instruction of the Lord, and the growing sentiment of the devotee is that Krishna knows what's good for me. He'll do everything that I need in due course of time. There's a prayer by Prithu Maharaj in which he says, I'm praying to you, but I really don't know what I want or need. Therefore, I'm leaving it up to you. You do it. You please benedict me in the way that is best for me, because I don't know. Just like, and Prabhupada gives the example, and Prithu Maharaj does also, the father and the son. The little son doesn't know, but the father knows what's good for the child. So he puts himself in that same position. And so I may ask for many different things, but they may be misguided. So it's the mood of surrender, that I'll simply follow the instruction that was given to me, and then the Lord will arrange whatever is necessary to go back to Godhead or not. I mean, when a devotee is fully engaged in devotional service, there are cases where he's not interested in going back to Godhead. He's interested in staying in the material world to assist his spiritual master to do the work of preaching Krishna consciousness and so forth. But the idea is there's no difference between that and being back to Godhead. If one has that surrendered mood, then going back to Godhead is not even a consideration. The devotee is already liberated in that state. Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira nikilap apyavastastu jivan mukta suuchite. The one who is engaged fully with all the one's senses in following the order of the spiritual master is already liberated even in this body, is known as jivan mukta. Other questions? While you're considering, I have a quotation. There's a very important section here. We heard something from Prabhupada's purport this morning about the importance of having a spiritual master and following the instructions of the spiritual master. So this is elaborated upon in our most important guidebook for Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if you don't have the full set of this, then see me after class and I'll get it for you. Okay? Anyone? You all have this? The full set? Okay, see me after class. I'll arrange that you get it, the full set. The first chapter of this book is about guidance, because Gaudiya Vaishnavism is a culture of guidance. We take guidance at every step. Therefore, the first verse, Vande Guru Nisha Bhaktan, he starts off that his first line in the book is, I offer my respectful obeisances to all my guides. Gurun means plural. All the guides that I have, all my mentors, all my gurus, I'm offering obeisances first there. And then he elaborates in the first chapter about the various kinds of guidance that one gets from Krishna through the gurus. So the first kind of guru is called the Vartmana Prarakshaka Guru. That's the one who first shows one the path of devotional service. And that's not a mistake, and that's not just accidental. That's Krishna's arrangement. And we told that to people yesterday. When we went door to door, we met one man who said that he has a brother or sister who's a life member of ISKCON. He said, I've been to the temple before. And so we appreciated that. And I still told him he had an opportunity to, if he'd like to help with the donation. So he said, well, what's the difference between what you're doing here and me coming to the temple and giving a donation? And I said, the difference is that I said, there's no difference. There's no difference at all. That we're the same cause. We came from the temple. I said, but the point is we didn't know you lived here, and we knocked on your door, and you opened the door, and we're here and you're there, and the temple just came to you. And that's kind of miraculous. And he was like, yeah, I kind of agree with that. So I think I'll give a donation. It's an opportunity. And so the Vartmana Pradakshika Guru is one who shows up. And that's in the verse today. Is a very salient point. It's in the verse. He says, Yad uktam pati drishtena. When all the sons of Prachinabhari left home to execute austerities, they met Lord Shiva. Is that the verse? Yeah. Who, out of great mercy, instructed them about the absolute truth. All the sons of Prachinabhari meditated upon the instructions, chanting and worshiping them with great care and attention. So the word pati means, you see the word pati? Third word? It means on the way. So in this verse, what's happening is the Prachetas, who are descendants of Prithu Maharaj, after several generations, they're great sages. And they were instructed by their father, Prachinabhari, to go and perform austerities to get ready in order to propagate the universe. And so they're on their way, pati, they're on their way to perform austerities. You know how long they performed austerities for? 10,000 years. Does that sound okay? We can have a japa period for that time? Well, so now my point is they're on their way to perform austerity, and what happened on their way? They met Lord Shiva. And so this is what happens when you're on your way to follow the instruction. They got an instruction and they were going to do it. And on the way there, everything fell into place. In other words, they met their spiritual master, Lord Shiva. He just showed up because he knew. In the same way, Dhruva Maharaj, he just split, as they used to say in the 60s. He split. Sometimes devotees would leave a note, I just split. Dhruva Maharaj was Dhruva Maharaj was at home, 5-year-old child, and he became extremely annoyed, to say the least, with his father, and wanted to have retribution. So he, with great anger, he went to his mother, and his mother told him, yeah, you got to go to the forest and find the Lord. And with full intention of following that instruction, she became his Vartmana Pradakshika Guru. First of all, he had an intense desire, and as soon as you have an intense desire to approach the Lord in any way whatsoever, then you'll get some instruction. And then he said, I'm going to do it. I'm going. And he left. And he just went to the forest. And did he know how to follow the instruction very perfectly? He didn't know anything. He was just a kid. And all he knew was, I'm going to do this. And he took off. And then what happened when he was on his way? Narada Muni showed up. How did Narada Muni know to show up? Well, it says in the verse that he overheard the conversation between Dhruva and his mother. And Prabhupada explains what that means. He says that actually means because Krishna is within everyone's heart, when somebody has an intense desire to serve Krishna, then Krishna informs the right people to intersect and come and help this person. And heaven and earth move because the person's trying to serve the Lord. Just like the first aphorism in the Vedanta Sutras, Tato Brahma Jignasa. It means ask the question, the big question. How do I do this? How do I actually find this, the supreme goal of life? And it's so available that if you just sincerely ask the question, then the answers will come rushing into your life from every corner of the world. On your way. If you make your way, you find the instruction and you have faith in it and you hold on to it and you say, I'm doing this. That's when everything moves. And you don't get it until you make the decision also. It's hidden. That's why it's secret. Raja Vidya Raja Kuyam. It's a secret process because only people who are sincere can find it. Only when you internally address this matter and say, Krishna, I give up. I'm gonna surrender to you, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to find you. So if you want, Prabhupada says in his commentary about Dhruva Maharaj, if you want an instruction like Dhruva Maharaj got, then you should have a burning desire like he had also. So you get direction like that on your way there. You may not know what's going to happen, and that's pretty exciting too, isn't it? Because normally life's pretty boring and predictable, isn't it? But if you take a risk and you say, I'm going to give up some bad habit for the sake of Krishna, or I'm going to embrace the order, and you try it, then you get strength that you never knew that you could get, and you get help that you never knew you could get. So in the first chapter, we hear Vande Guru Nisha Bhaktan. He's offering obeisances to all the guides that are coming on behalf of Krishna, starting with the Vartmana Pradakshika Guru, and then there's the instructing spiritual masters, and then there's the Diksha Guru. So there's the Diksha Guru is one who gives one the mantra, and the Shiksha Guru is the one who instructs one how to chant the mantra. And so there's planting the seed, you have to have a seed, right? That's the mantra. And you have to water the seed, correct? Which is more important, watering the seed or having the seed? It's a trick question. Okay, in this whole chapter, which you should study very carefully, Prabhupada writes, one should always remember that a person who is reluctant to accept a spiritual master and be initiated is sure to be baffled in his endeavor to go back to Godhead. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress towards spiritual realization, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Such a helpless person is compared to a ship without a rudder, for such a ship can never reach its destination. It is imperative, therefore, that one accept a spiritual master if he at all desires to gain the favor of the Lord. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there's no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. There's no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. If one thinks that he is above consulting anyone else, including a spiritual master, he is at once an offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. Such an offender can never go back to Godhead. Interesting point in the sixth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is about the holy name. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that if you can get the holy name from a Vaishnav who's on the planet available and he can give it to you, and you don't take it, said you're committing the third offense to the holy name. What is that third offense? Or considering him an ordinary person. And therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti says you won't be able to attain perfection in that. And later on in this section, when Lord Shiva is instructing the Prachetas, it's mentioned that to receive the hymns and the mantras from a Vaishnava gives them more potency. So there's this idea of injunctions and instructions and authority and taking authority, because if you don't take the authority of Krishna and the spiritual master, then you're forced to take another kind of authority. What might that be? Yeah, and that can come from many different directions. You have to speculate your way through the world, and that doesn't work out well for the living entity. He gets thrashed at every minute by taking speculative instructions. You have to take it from a supreme authority, and that means you have to develop faith in the Shastra, Guru Sadhu and Shastra, to hold on to those very tightly. Any other questions? Yes, Gora.
Just a thought.
Okay.
And hold the mic close, please.
Yes. I found it interesting that
Close.
even though Dhruva Maharaj was materially motivated, he wanted a kingdom greater than that of his father, but still he was intent on having Krishna's darshan. So it seems that even though one may have a kama, sarva kama, one may have a material motivation, still, if one is seeking Krishna, that's a good thing.
Rukmini, do you remember that we read that yesterday? We read in Prabhupada's purport in the 5th canto as we were driving around to the different spots. And Prabhupada said this exact point. He made this exact point. He said that even people who are asking for a material benediction from the Lord they are considered to be great souls. And he quotes, Udarak sarva evaite gyanitot vai mamevatam astita sahyukta mamevam utamam gatim. From the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. And Krishna names the 4 categories of people who approach him, and some of them are materially motivated. And he says, they're all great souls. Udara, they're all great souls. Because they're approaching Krishna and not somebody else. And he does quote, akama sarva kamo va. That whatever your motive is, if you come to Krishna, then that will be fulfilled in the way that Krishna decides to fulfill it, so that you get the best out of it. Just like Putana. She approached Krishna, and she didn't have a very good grasp on... she didn't have a very good motive. But still, this is one of the celebrated verses of the Bhagavatam. Krishna just took the fact that she dressed up as a mother and discounted the fact that she was trying to kill him. And gave her a kind of liberation that is very rare, one as a kind of mother in the spiritual world. We have a couple more minutes. Either reflection or a question. Yes?
Wait. Mike is coming.
Did you get any specific instruction from your spiritual master?
Yes.
Can you talk about it?
He said, you must also read my books. That was direct, because we had gathered to meet Prabhupada in San Francisco. And when I say we, it was a small group of Sankirtan devotees. And we went up to Prabhupada's room. It was an apartment. That apartment's still there. Somebody else is living in it now, but it used to be occupied by Keshav Bharti, who was a grihasta at the time, now he's a sannyasi, and Jayananda, the famous Jayananda Thakur. So they shared apartments. They're grihasta couples. They had one big apartment, or small apartment. And before Prabhupada came to San Francisco, it was a half block away from the temple. They would completely clean that place and then repaint it, everything, and arrange it. And they moved out somewhere else, and then Prabhupada would stay there. Because there wasn't sufficient place in the San Francisco temple for Prabhupada to stay. So he stayed there, and then one day we had a fledgling, actually it wasn't fledgling, it was one of the top Sankirtan parties in America. And so we were invited as members of that book distribution party to come up and meet Prabhupada. So we came up and we sat in front of him, and he was behind his desk, sitting on the floor. His desk was about that high. And the temple president was explaining to Prabhupada that we were part of the Sankirtan party, we were distributing his books, and he was telling what the scores were and things like that. And Prabhupada looked right at us and he said, you must also read my books. I have not written these books just for selling. I've written them for you to read, become pure devotees, and go back to Godhead. And as far as I was concerned, he was looking right at me. And that instruction, hearing that instruction gave me strength, because there were times when I noticed that there were others around me who felt compelled to just work all day long and not read Prabhupada's books. I heard it directly from him, and he was very stern about it also. And therefore I knew that it was incumbent upon me to take time out, no matter what anybody else said, to make sure that I read Prabhupada's books, and to continue doing that. Because every day is a new day, and every day is a new chance to fall into Maya. And if you don't take full shelter of hearing and chanting from Prabhupada's books, your mind will drift off into the great unknown in the material world. Destination unknown, Prabhupada said. When you disobey the orders of the spiritual master, reject the spiritual master. And he considers this a very serious thing, so you have to constantly stay in touch with hearing from the books. So I took that as a direct instruction. Any other things? Yes, Prabhu? We have 2 minutes.
What is the way of full surrender?
That is a process. And it's described by Rupa Goswami as having 6 components. The first is to accept things that are favorable for devotional service. The second is to reject things that are unfavorable. So with these first 2, you have to carefully look at your life and all the things that you're doing and winnow out those things that are unfavorable and accept those things that are favorable. And you'll do it incrementally. And then you have to also develop an attitude that Krishna is maintaining me, that he's my sole maintainer. And this may take some time, but one should move in that direction. He's my maintainer and he's my protector. Nobody else protects me. We met a man yesterday, a Muslim man, who was fully convinced that the power of God. He told us for about half an hour, he was telling us. In fact, we came to the door and he was sitting on the couch. His wife answered the door, and when we answered, they were a little reluctant to even talk to us, and what to speak of when we told him about giving a donation and so forth. He was on the couch and he was no. So we got on our knees, because we're not beneath getting on our knees at somebody's door, and we won't go until they give something. So then he started talking. And he said, I'm meditating on God 24 hours a day. And he told us how, because he's had various physical ailments. And he said each time he just depends on God. He said his spleen became enlarged and the doctor said, you have to take it out. And he said, why take it out? He said, you don't need it. And he said, God created it. I must need it for some reason. I'm keeping it. He expressed this idea that I'm being protected by God, not by these medical doctors. He asked for a guarantee and they said, we can't guarantee you anything. See? But God can guarantee me. Anyway, there's a way in which one develops these feelings that God is protecting me, he's my maintainer, and also a tenet of surrender is one should always be meek and humble. You have to practice Trinadapi Sunichena in your life. And finally, Atma Nivedanam, you have to consider that everything you have belongs to Krishna. And so this is a process through which you practice throughout your life of this kind of surrender. And the last point is from Mahabhagavat Prabhu.
I have a question. How can we encourage someone who has in fact disobeyed and continues to disobey the instruction of the spiritual master?
Well, it depends. It's a very individual process. But in general, encouraging those who have fallen away from devotional service for one reason or another, by keeping in touch with them, unless they become venomous, in which case the Shastra enjoins, first of all, Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dusatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha, that devotees should avoid those who are envious of the Lord. And the acharyas say that includes Vaishnavas who become envious of the Lord, and they become detrimental to one's advancement in devotional service. If that's not the case, if they're simply sensually weak and fallen, but their attitude is correct, just like we read in the Bhagavad-gita, the one who believes in the injunction of the Lord, even if unable to follow it. If somebody's in that category, we should continually extend ourselves. I had a friend godbrother, who fell away from the process of devotional service for 20 years. And I kept in contact with him as a friend for many years, even though he had, practically it seemed like every month he had some new harebrained idea about how to conduct life, went through so many different crazy philosophies and everything like that. I just tolerated because of our friendship, and one day he had bought a new fax machine. That's how long ago this was. And I happen to have a fax machine. And so he called me and he said, can you fax me something? I want to see if my fax machine works. So the only thing I had on my desk at the time was a shloka I had printed out from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that said that anyone who thinks that chanting Hare Krishna one time is equal to performing 1 billion Ashwamedha horse yagyas at the confluence of the Ganges and Jamuna during the eclipse of the sun is an atheist doomed to go to hell. So I put that, I wasn't thinking that this is for him. I just thought, there's some printed matter. I'm putting it in the fax. And it went out, and I didn't hear back from him for about a week. And then I got a handwritten letter, 7 pages, where he said, I can't believe that I threw the greatest jewel into the gutter. And then he made a full comeback. And so, you know, Krishna's attitude towards devotees who are fallen is apichet sudaracharo. Bhajate man ananyama. If they're properly situated how? In their attitude. If they don't become resentful of the principle and resent the devotees and everyone else, everyone can make a comeback. Even if it's sudaracharo. Sudaracharo means extremely degraded, what somebody does. And therefore, we should be encouraging to people. And I know that I know devotees who have had situations where they become discouraged for one reason or another, and then just somebody coming to their door with a plate of Mahaprasadam and saying, here, I brought this for you. It changes their mind and they come back to devotional service. So it's extremely important to extend ourselves to those who have disobeyed the orders of the spiritual master and try to help them come back. Thank you very much for being here on a Sunday morning to hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam and such excellent questions. And now we're going to have a first grain ceremony for, and I'm not even sure who it's for.
Baby's here.
There's a baby here? Look at that nice baby. First grain ceremony. So the first grain ceremony, we'll have a simple ceremony, and what it'll entail is, for those who want to say, you're not obligated, but we'll chant the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita together, because within the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, first of all, it's the appropriate yajna for all. First we'll chant Hare Krishna, and then at the end we'll chant Hare Krishna, and the center of the yajna will be chanting the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, which bestows great benedictions to everybody involved, and what to speak of the child. And within the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, there's the verse, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva, which says that, where Krishna says, I am the fire of digestion in the belly of every living entity. And this is how babies first discover Krishna and come in contact with him, is through annamoy, eating, everything. And so, so we'll have that grain ceremony, then we're going to give him his first grains, and the first grains he gets is going to be Mahaprasadam, and he sounds pretty excited about it. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Premanande. Nitai Gauda Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gauda Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gauda Hari Bo. Vanchakalpaduruscha kripasindhabevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, hey, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman.